Hello, good morning.
Hey Joshua.
How are you doing?
Uh, Ready for summer. I don't know. How are you?
Is it pretty cold in Utah?
It snowed again over the weekend, but yeah,
Oh,
kind of tired of that weather.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, here it's getting kind of spring, I hope, I guess. I mean, we had snow a couple of days ago, actually for the first time this season, or for the second time, to be honest, but
Well,
yeah, that's better.
does it get very cold or lots of snow, or is it just kind of mild?
I was actually only one day, and that was like I don't know, like 10 centimeters, no, maybe like 5 centimeters of snow, and then it just disappeared the next day. So I don't know, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, we've had a similar winter. I mean, the higher elevations they get lots of snow, but down in the
Yeah.
valley there hasn't been too much this year.
On what elevation is Provo?
Oh, you're gonna make me convert it to meters? It's about 4,500 feet of a sea level.
4,500 feet to meters. Okay. All right. Okay, it's quite high. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But the ski
1,371 meters.
Right. Yep. Yep. Are we gonna have Sebastian today, or is he out?
Sebastian is sick today, unfortunately.
That's too bad. Oh,
Yes.
Looks like there's a lot in the agenda here on Ceph ADM and a few items about Rook. Who was it that added those?
I think Sage added that.
Hmm. Okay, maybe we need to wait a minute and see if he comes. Yeah, I was hoping Sebastian would be here. Yeah, just one item we talked about for Rook last week in the community meeting. So thanks, Juan Miguel, for adding that to the agenda, and we talked through. So we'll sync up with Sebastian afterwards. But basically, the conclusion was that we'll create a new repo in Rook for the Python client, and then we'll move that Python client code from the Ceph repo that was just created over to Rook. So we won't need to host that in a Ceph repo anymore. Um, yep. So that was the conclusion of that discussion. All right. Well, I mean, I'm happy to start talking through the Rook items that were
Sure,
added
go
here.
ahead.
So, all right. So we need to do some testing with the Octopus RC. So in Rook, we actually already have a PR open for just to do some testing against Octopus. So let me go find that PR. But basically, the PR just updates our integration tests to run against Octopus using the devil latest tag. I think is all it uses. Oh, hey Sage.
Hmm. Hey.
Yeah. So we have this PR that uses the latest Octopus image, the test pass at least. Um, so there, I haven't merged it yet. I'm waiting for the official release so we can have a a reliable image to test against. And separately, Juan Miguel is looking at setting up a nightly Rook build where we can constantly test against the latest master or latest octopus or things like that. So that is the goal, definitely, to test against more recent things instead of only released Ceph images. So Sage, you added these items to the agenda?
Yeah. I don't know, Sebastian. Is Sebastian out this week? What's going on?
He's sick today, unfortunately.
Okay, I was wondering. Okay. Yeah, I got a long list of stuff. I guess we could start with Rook. So good to hear that that's coming. And then I think I just need to sit down and figure out how to run Rook on my local. So me installed Cube on my local boxes, and so figure out how to run Rook on that cluster from my dev build branch or whatever. Let's figure out how to do that. Take 4 hours to go build an image.
Yeah, to get the image is the tricky part. So if you can start with an image and then inject updated binaries, that's usually the shortcut.
Exactly, yeah. Figure out how to do that. Anyway, okay.
Okay, but
I think I'll. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, no, continue.
Okay, I was just gonna say I think we've got like the Rook code. There are all these interface changes that we've been making, and I think we made all the right, hopefully, fixes. But like, I don't know if anybody's actually tested it and knows what the current status of a set of orchestrator commands are, like how many of them actually work in Rook. So really need to be able to play with it and just see what works and what doesn't. That's all. It'd be awesome if we had some real testing. But
I've been testing with the Ceph volume changes, but I'm not sure about the orchestrator API.
Yeah. It'd be nice if they both sort of worked pretty consistently out of the box. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the Rook side?
Yes, just to comment a couple of things, okay? One is about the Rook environment, well, the Rook cluster that I am trying to set up using your server, Sage, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I have been able to create the Kubernetes cluster using Kube ADM, okay? But in this moment, I am blocked with that, and for 2 days in this moment, okay? Because I cannot achieve, there is an error when I start the cluster in the monitors, because it is impossible to connect with the monitors, and the operator is trying to run the Ceph quorum status command, and all the time is timeout. Okay, what I have seen is
networking. Is it using host networking?
No.
Because there is a Ceph cluster on that machine already, and so if they bind to the default ports on the host network, it will fail. That might be.
Okay.
I wonder if that's part of the problem.
Okay. I will change. Okay, thank you. So completely crazy with that. Checking firewall, checking IPs, checking lot of the.
It's probably getting permission errors or something because it's the wrong key.
Oh my God. Okay, thank you, Sage.
Okay.
nothing like talk. Okay, and in the other hand, the past week I also started with integration test for the orchestrator. Okay. There is an open pull request just to see if I was in the correct path, okay, and it seems that it's okay. And I have this moment 3-4 more tests checking the orchestrator API, and let's see if I finish with the test with the blinking lights in the cluster, and I continue with the Rook integration test. This is all from my part.
Sounds good.
There's much more for Rook as far as orchestration goes.
Okay.
Yep, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think the next step is just to test it with the latest Octopus and just see what works and what doesn't work, because I don't know if anybody's. Yep.
Right. And the Orchestrator API is not tested in the Rook CI yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great. Well, it doesn't work in Nautilus, so, or it doesn't do very much, at least in Nautilus. All the CLI commands have like completely changed pretty much. Octopus.
Mm-hmm.
Start there.
Okay.
All right. Ceph ADM. It's a bummer. Sebastian isn't here, but we can. Joshua, you're here. So okay. So the apply thing merged. That's the main thing. The big change, which means that Ceph ADM now behaves a lot more like Kubernetes, where you basically tell it how many of you give it a spec for a service. Like I want 3 monitors and 5 managers or whatever, and it persists that, and then in the background it has an operator basically that sits there and makes that true. So it looks and feels a lot more like Kubernetes now. So that merged. The next one is the scheduler one. That one tested out several times over the weekend. It's rebased. It's ready to merge. I was gonna wait for Sebastian to look since he had a comment, but I think since he's sick, we can just dismiss it and go ahead and merge it. So then I'm wondering if we want like a pause type of command where it'll just tell if you want the manager to stop like trying to create daemons and do whatever it's doing, apply specs. We should have something to just like make it pause. There is actually already a pause for upgrade, but we could even just generalize that and just say pause, or we could keep it, make it a separate pause, or I don't know. What do you, Joshua, have you thought about this? Feels like it's a stop button thing.
I mean, for upgrades, it kind of makes sense, right? Because it could potentially be very, very long running. But all the apply service kind of things and well, OC removals, they're not that long running. I mean, the longest time that it actually will take is on the first deployment, but that is also not longer than, I don't know, like at max half an hour if the cluster is really, really big. So I don't know if it makes sense.
Might not need it. Okay. Well, we can just see. I mean, yeah, I think the longest delays I've seen are just because I don't know why it's in sometimes I see it being kind of slow, but I haven't looked at the log to see why. So I'll pay more attention now. Okay, the other thing was the service description right now doesn't have a reference to the spec. I was thinking we should replace that spec status or whatever that field was that you'd added with the spec itself, so that we can enhance the output of the ls command. You could see what the placement was. You could see, I don't know, anything else.
Yeah, I had that in my initial proposal, but I dropped it for some reason, which I can't remember anymore. Yeah, they should actually be somehow referenced to each other. So
yeah. I just wanted to put the placement description in there, which is what that pull request does. There's something else actually that. Oh, right. So the other thing was service description has this weird Rados config location field that nothing seems to use right now, but you could imagine that other things will want to look at details of like per type specific details about the service that are all in the spec. So it makes more sense just to reference the spec than to add a bunch of extra random fields to service description, it seems. Okay, so for the apply service, I think the next step is to change it so that the apply part is smarter. Right now, it's just like counting how many daemons it has and how many should be on, and then adding and removing based on that. But it needs to to actually compare the hosts. So you can have the spec basically tell it to move a daemon from one place to another, which I'd started to do before the whole apply thing, but I think needs to just be redone on top of it. Is that something that you want to look at, Joshua?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I was just wondering if currently our process is deterministic at all. So imagine if you specify like if you feed in a spec file and then you export it again and then you apply it again, would you actually get the same results? I think not.
I think you do. You do. It's a little. So basically, what it does is when it's doing the node placement, it also looks at where all the current daemons are, and it prefers to use all the ones that already have daemons, basically. And only if there aren't enough does it start picking them randomly.
Only with your pull request, right? With the revamp scheduling one.
Yeah, exactly.
Before it, not right. Yeah.
Right. So as soon as that merges, which will be as soon as we get off this call, then yes, right, exactly.
Okay.
So it's not deterministic in that if it hasn't created the daemon yet, then it might pick new random ones. But if the daemon actually has been placed, then it'll keep picking that same one.
Okay.
In that regard, there is one sort of subtlety that sort of bugs me, and that is that there's the spec that we persist that has the parameters for placement spec that the user provided. That's very like it's what the actual intent is. And then after you go through this node assignment, it basically modifies that same structure and populates the hosts field and says, and then that's what the rest of apply services uses. And so if you look at spec before, it might have no hosts because you have like label foo, and then after the host will be populated, so I'll have both label foo and all the hosts. I think maybe we should refactor that well, so that the node placement actually just returns the hosts. Because it only has one caller now, and so that the placement spec isn't actually modified in place at all.
So I think in my opinion, it should not modify the specs at all, right? So if you pass in a placement spec with a host, you should also like save it with the host, right? But if you just save it with only a count or a label specification, you should only get that ever back and only save that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So I think I think basically that just means it's probably a pretty simple patch just to the node assignment class to just change so it just returns the list of hosts as a return value instead of. It should be pretty quick change because there's only one caller now, and all the tests have to get rejiggered slightly. But anyway, yeah, maybe do that first, and then the add remove stuff.
Yeah, I do have a branch that does some cleanups because the spec dump command is also a bit broken.
Yeah. It'd be nice if that actually generated like a nice bit of YAML or JSON or whatever it is going to be.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on to that.
All right. The other thing was there's this placement argument that is on every command now. So part of that pull request that we're about to merge fixes all the CLI commands so that instead of taking a count, a node list, and a label, there's just one argument called placement. And it goes to the string parsing helper thing or whatever to do it. But it's currently a list of strings. And I'm wondering if we should just make it a single argument string so it's more easily slots into other parts of the CLI. But it's going to make the syntax a little bit grosser because I think most people are going to do like pretty simple placement descriptions, like a list of comma separated hosts or something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, ideally they could use a file, right, and then just pass it in.
They could do that too. Yeah.
Because in the YAML format, it actually doesn't look too terrible.
Yeah.
Because the lines are actually separated.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, maybe Sebastian weigh in on that one too. You might have this. There's a ticket open for some failures that I was seeing, and it basically boils down to when the Ceph testing code or whatever is injecting socket failures, then sometimes the CLI reconnects and resends the command. So for the monitor and manager commands in general, they're always written to be idempotent, so you can always resend the same command multiple times and it'll still succeed. But the Ceph ADM commands, some of them are actually doing something and are not idempotent. So like the one that I was seeing fail was the OST create. If you OST create again on the same device, it'll return an error that said this device is already prepared.
On that note, that is only true for non-drive group based deployments, because if you deploy something without a drive group, it actually uses a different path in Ceph volume, and it uses Ceph volume prepare and Ceph volume activate and create, while the drive group based one uses Ceph volume LVM batch, and batch is idempotent. Oh well, it is by now.
Okay. I'm just wondering, basically, I think basically we need to figure out how we're going to persist the drive groups and what the sort of what that's going to look like. So maybe we need is there a pull request already open for this? I know I saw that you guys were talking about it, but I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, there is a pull request open, but that's very old, and I haven't had a look at it in like 2 weeks or so. So it's here, and it's also not up to date and not rebased. But I think it can just be stored in the Mon store and then just read
like a
every
spec.
time.
Like I wonder if we should treat it the same way as we do a spec, so that when you do Orch LS, then it's just a spec of type or a service of type OSD, and then it has somehow it shows what the like a concise description of what the drive group is. If that
that
like it could
certainly
be like OSD
is a bit more scary than the rest.
Yeah.
So that's why I initially left it out in my service supply thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyways, I mean, OSD create the command especially needs a bit more fanciness in terms of that it actually will tell you what would happen if you apply this in that drive group, and it also needs to be persistent, and there's some room for improvement. But I agree, ultimately it should be added to the service specifications somehow.
I mean, we could even separate it out into 2 commands the way we did with the other stuff, where there's an apply OSD where you give a drive group specification that's persisted and you name it and all that stuff. Like you could have a OSD.SSDs or an OSD. Big hard drives, whatever. Like you can name them and have they matched models and all that stuff, and you would actually see that when you do Orch LS. And then we could have a daemon OSD create command that does sort of the one shot create an OSD on this device right now, and don't have any persistent state surrounding it.
Yeah, I think internally it already happens like this. It's just the way.
Yeah.
So it's just that you currently pass the file in over the command line instead of reading it from the Mon store, so it's more or less just the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I will also kind of have a look at this.
Okay. Yep. All right. The next thing is dependent updates. So, or actually, I guess the last thing first. So I think we have all the monitoring pieces merged for Node Exporter, Alert Manager, Prometheus, and Grafana. I think they're all there. So I think somebody who's sort of knows how this works just needs to just make sure they all deploy and they all get configured properly. And that, I think there's a final step where you have to configure the dashboard to use it or something. I'm not sure exactly. And just make sure the whole thing works. And then write a little documentation section to the Ceph ADM docs that say this is how you stand up the monitoring stack. leave that one for Paul Kusner, who is hopefully back from vacation. Maybe he can look at it today, but we'll see. But sort of the last annoying thing in all this is that most of these have dynamically generated configs, and so the order that you deploy them matters, and you have to reconfig them after other things get deployed. So I think we need to add some metadata to. Well, my first idea was that we should keep a last config and a created timestamp for all the services, so that you can tell when new things are created after something was configured and then reconfig it. But that doesn't handle the case where you delete a service. You don't know that you have to reconfig to remove it from the config. And so I think what we actually need is when we config or deploy a service, we have to remember what all the dependencies were at the time that we did that and record that somewhere, so that later on, if we come back and we see that the dependency set has changed, new node exporters or node exporters were removed or something, then we should trigger a config to go again.
So on the grand scheme, Ceph services do have some sort of dependency to each other. Would it make sense to add a more generalistic approach, something like systemd dependency tracking or whatever, so that you can specify the dependency or have it tracked internally somewhere?
I was going to add a method probably to service spec or something. So add a method in there somewhere that says what are the dependencies for a given service, and it would return a list. And then base everything on that. And for now, it would just have like these relatively small set of dependencies. If it changes in the future to be more complicated, then I don't know that there's anything that the user would specify that would have an extra. Not like these dependencies aren't always the same, just around this monitoring stack.
Yeah.
But I thought we could start with that. Anyway, I think that might be the next thing that I tackle. Figuring out the dependencies.
Yeah, because that can be quite beneficial for the whole apply thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be able to just say but and then have everything just converge.
Right.
Same way it does with kube. Anyway. All right, that's everything I had. All right, any other topics? Thoughts?
That's all I've got. Anybody else? All right.
All right. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later. Bye.
See you guys.